My name is Ramona McClatchey. I was born Ramona Perlenfine on September 20th, 1938. Mom and Dad were always games people, so they enjoyed playing games, primarily card games, not so much board games, but we played a lot of card games. And even years later, when Russ and I were dating, Mom said, well, we have to teach him to play bridge because he couldn't be a member of this family if he didn't play bridge. So he learned to play bridge. But we, bridge and cribbage and euchre, pinochle some, and really just enjoyed this. Obviously pre-TV, so that's all you did. You played games or read books or did some kind of needlework, and that was it as far as women were concerned. I remember learning to ride a bicycle around the second house that we lived in, because I remember Mom walking behind me, hanging on the seat and maintaining the balance for me so I could keep myself erect, just going around the house and around 2 or 3 times before, okay, finally she let go and I was all right then. Mom and Dad moved to near Walbach, Nebraska, Wolbach. My father had been in the bank in Walbach, but then decided that, well, there was a family farm available for him to use near Mount Ayr, and so he decided that he would take that on. My brother was born in 1934, and Jimmy had died earlier the year that Clyde was born. Anyway, we moved to Harvard, Nebraska, and my dad was a banker there, and that's where I started elementary school. We lived in 2 different houses while we were there, so even though we were living in the same town, we managed to keep on moving. That seemed to be the story of our life. The summer of 1955, we moved to Des Moines. My dad decided he was going to retire, and so he bought the Royal Motel, and just, okay, to save on labor costs, okay, I was quote unquote volunteered and helped with the whole thing. And then later that year, or maybe it was the next summer, I don't remember when, but as far as timeline, then I got a job working at the store across the street, so taking care of cash register and so forth, and making change. And still today, when I go into a store and see that cashier's having trouble figuring out, well, how much change does she get with her, I think, heaven's sakes, where's your math ability? But anyway, just because that was part of what I did. And then the next summer, or maybe it was the fall, I don't remember, the fall of that year, is when I started my waitress job. I enjoy the working in the restaurant, and the tips were pretty good, so I enjoyed that too. I first started North High in Des Moines, and Paula Stutzman was a friend of mine there, and the 2 of us became very close. And as a matter of fact, when she heard that I was going to Cornell, she thought, well, I'll try that too. And so Paula wound up going to Cornell as well. I guess I was a pretty ordinary teenager. I didn't date much, just because of the fact that I was more concerned with having girlfriends than I was with having a boyfriend. And then the boys that I got to know were ones that were in the church group, and I enjoy them on a friend basis, but not somebody that I wanted to date. Yeah. Well, in the summer of 1957, I graduated from North High, Des Moines, and went to Cornell College in Iowa, in Mount Vernon, in that fall. And it was at Cornell that I met Russ, my husband. So there's a date coming up that close to Valentine's Day, and it was a girl ask guy thing. And so I thought, what the heck? I'll ask Russ to go to the dance with me. And it was, yes, okay. And then I found out later that he had gone back and talked to some of his fraternity friends, and he said, I'm not going to let the pigs prance, which is what they called the girl ask guy dance at that point. He said, I'm not going to let that be my first date with Ramona. So he made sure he asked me out a date before that. But anyway, that's how we met, and we started going together. And in the course of our years at Cornell, I guess we broke up once, but we got back together. We went steady, and then he pinned me with his fraternity pin, and then in our senior year, he proposed, and I got my engagement ring. And then after graduation in '61, by that time, Russ had decided that yes, he was going to seminary, but he didn't want to go to Evanston because he said that keeps everything too much middle America. He wanted to have some experience on one coast or the other. So he decided he'd go to Wesley Seminary in Washington, D.C. But he thought that he should have 1 year there without being married. And so I said, okay, fine, you go ahead and make your arrangement to go to Wesley. And well, let me see, where can I teach? I found that there was an opening in the Cleveland public school system. And I thought, well, that's halfway between Washington, D.C. and Iowa. So there were a couple of times then that more than, I don't know, 2 or 3 times during the year that I would fly out to Washington, D.C. And so I got my introduction to Washington, D.C. that during that time, and Russ and I had fun exploring the sites and being tourists during that period. I think singing was always part of the family, so forth, and we would sing in the car and so forth as we were traveling. But Mom played the piano, and she wanted both my brother and me to learn. Clyde learned a little bit, and then he took up the trombone that Dad had played, and so it was a silver trombone that then, very interestingly, now is possession of our older son, Michael. He learned how to play the trombone, and he treasures the fact just because of the history of the instrument. But then I learned after, I guess, probably freshman or sophomore year in high school, I learned to play the flute and the piccolo there. And then once we moved to Des Moines, the first year I stayed with the band, and then it just was too many other things going on. I didn't feel like spending all that time on the field with the marching band and all that stuff. So I got out of that. But it was probably because of singing in church that got me initially started with the piano, and the hymns and so forth have always been important as far as the music that I studied. Church and the relationship to the church family have always been important to me. They were important to Mom and Dad, and that was something that they wanted us to make sure that we shared with them. They thought that it was important as far as the family was concerned, would be a strengthening agent as far as family relationships were concerned. And again, I think that's also from a family standpoint, because we moved as much as we did, the church became a family for us and was very important because of that. And that's been the case throughout my life, because it was with Russ being in the ministry and every congregation that he served, we opened up ourselves. Okay, this congregation will be our family for the next X number of years, however. And in some cases, we hung on to some of those friendships after the fact, but in other cases, okay, after the Christmas cards and so forth stopped, well, okay, then the next church became our church family and our support group, and that's became the family for our family, support group for them. But the whole role of faith and singing or saying of grace at meals was always important, and sitting down to a family table for certainly at the evening meal. Sometimes we were hit and miss as far as breakfast and lunch were concerned, but certainly the evening meal was one that we shared together, and we would sometimes sing graces, but if not singing, then Dad would pray, or if one of the grandparents was there, then sometimes one of them would be the one that would say grace. But that grace, and that was always part of it. And we tried to bring our kids up with that prayer as being an important part of your life, and the whole relationship to God and Christ were important in that development. As a family, we probably did more in our vacations with Russ's family, as far as when we would go from here, from the Maryland area out to the Midwest, where Mom and Dad and Russ's mom were living. We would stop in the Chicago area where Russ's sister Marianne and her family lived. And then we would go on to Iowa Falls, Iowa, where Audria and her husband lived. And so we'd wind up making a family connection out of the whole thing. Russ was, I don't know how old the van was, but it was not, no way was a new car. He used that van a lot for transporting the kids in the youth groups and so forth. But then we started camping with the Lansdowne Church. So that van became a real gathering place for us, in that we started out camping first just in a tent, but that didn't last very long. Then we got a tent camper, and that was a little more civilized. But we never went the route of going to a trailer. So the twins and Michael were born in York Hospital in York, Pennsylvania. And I knew that I was having twins 8 days before they were born. I had gone to the doctor, and he said, "Ramona, I can't figure out why you haven't delivered yet. The size you are, as big as," he said, "I just can't figure it out." And he listened, he said, "I think that you're having twins." But he says, "I don't hear 2 heartbeats." So he sent me for an x-ray, because that's how they checked then. And I went out to the car and told Russ, I said, he wants me to go have an x-ray to see if I'm having twins. And we looked at each other and just shook our heads and said, "No way, twins, no twins in this family." And so we went, and I stayed in with the x-ray technician, and they printed out the x-ray for me, and they said, "Yes, there are 2 babies there, 1 boy and 1 girl." Or no, they didn't tell me the sex. They said, "Yes, there are 2 babies there. We can't tell the sex." That was it. And I went back out to the car. Russ was sitting there reading something or other. I just got in the car, and I just sat and nodded my head. And I don't know how long we sat in that parking lot before we went back to the OBGYN's office to give him the x-rays and let him know, yes, there are twins. So, okay. So, and so when Russ took me a few days later, when he took me to the hospital, the doctor said, "Well, I'm going to stay here." He said, you can go home if you want to, Russ. But he said, as quickly as Michael came when he was delivered, he said, "I'm not leaving. If she's here, we're going to have those babies." So I was awake when Mona was delivered. He said, "Okay, you've got your little girl now, Ramona." He said, "I'm putting you to sleep for the last one." So I went to sleep after that period. But that was an eventful delivery, and the fact that, how much science has changed as far as showing the twins so early and so forth, and that just wasn't done. And the doctor said, he said, "I never did hear 2 heartbeats. It was just the way they were lying with one on top of the other, whatever. Maybe stethoscopes got to be better too. I don't know." But it was quite an event. And then the laugh that came out of that was that the the women's group at one of the churches that Russ was serving had a shower for me a couple months before. And I came home from that shower and I was laughing at Russ. I said, oh boy, they gave one really nice thing. They gave me diaper service for, I don't know, 6 months or something like that. And it had twin insurance, so that if we have twins, they give you double the amount of diapers. And we both got a laugh out of that one too. Like, oh yeah, funny, yeah, we'll really use that. And so we got a chance to use the twin insurance. And the thing that was kind of interesting about that one was that Michael he was on the way to getting potty trained, but he wasn't completely. And so I wound up having enough diapers to take care of all 3 kids as needed. And that freed me up a whole lot of laundry. So that was a plus. My dad said, when this goes back even when probably the first shot that we had of my dad holding the twins and so forth, he just shook his head and he said, Ramona, it's just not fair. All the kids look like Russ. None of them look like you. We lived there in Parkton. From the twins were born in '68, and they were not quite 1 when we moved then to down to Christ Edmondson in Baltimore. And that was an inner city church. That was quite an experience because we were the only white family as far as and having any children in that neighborhood. Christ Edmondson was primarily a black church, but there were still white families that were in the church that had been in the church when it was integrated. And they stayed just to show their support for the whole integration process and so forth. But our sandbox in the backyard, and I don't know whether we got a picture of that or not, but we had the only sandbox in the neighborhood, and it became a gathering place for all the kids. They thought that was great. And Michael came in one day, he says, Mom, he says, why are all the kids touching my hair? And I thought, yeah, how different his hair was from their hair, the little ones. And they all just wanted to just touch his hair. And he was the only white child in his kindergarten class. And then we moved before he started first grade. There were times that I think Mona Marie felt that, why do the boys get to do that? And I don't get to do whatever they get to do. That kind of was the same. The boys were in Scouts together in Lansdowne. They did a good job as far as sharing and so forth with each other, and had a good time. I think we had a good time with playing games just as a family, and both Mona Marie, and Michael. So I was able to encourage them to take piano lessons, and they were all right with that. They took those for quite a while. I tried with Mark, and I'm not going to fight that battle. So, and then he said, Mom, why didn't you push me more? So he took up guitar quite a lot later than that. But Michael and Mona Marie played the piano together. So my primary recreation, I guess, is reading. I enjoy reading, and I do some knitting, but that's just to keep my hands busy when I'm watching TV, I guess. And active to a degree in that I try to get to a gym 4 or 5 times a day. 4 or 5 times a week. And then I have joined a Tai Chi class that is at the woman from the church is teaching here in Hedgesville, and enjoy that. And I've taken over for her when she's been on vacation or something like that. And it's primarily for an older group. They're people, I guess, in their late 50s or early 60s, but more probably in 70s or 80s that are part of the group. And it has both men and women in it. There are more women than men, but it's good in that it gets me up, gets me going, and just the fact that I am exercising on a regular basis, whether it's at the gym or with the Tai Chi class, that has I think been good for the health and so forth. Russell was much more the gardener than I was, so I have got tomato plants in back, but that's the extent of my garden. I enjoy spending time with the kids. The kids have done a great job especially since Russ's death, of coming up and being here, support, calling me on a regular basis and so forth. Then whenever they come up, we'll make sure we spend time playing games, just the two of us. If it's one of the children, or sometimes we wind up having two or three here, but it doesn't very often happen. And we've been just seeing this whole thing with the COVID has really upset as far as seeing family and so forth is concerned. It kind of interrupted the whole thing, so we kind of got out of sync as far as working out holidays and so forth. I just this past year, I gave, or I guess maybe it's been 2 years now, I gave the piano away to a lady in the church whose granddaughter was taking lessons, and the granddaughter, she was using a keyboard, but I really want a piano, Grandma. So I said, well, I don't use it this much, so go ahead. I'd rather see it have somebody that's going to be using it and learning. But I've missed the piano, so it's kind of I enjoy the music, and as I've said, I've missed having that one, but it's got a good home, and that's important too. So I don't have a lot of friends in this neighborhood. We moved in here, and some of the people that I made friends with already moved out. And so I know this past winter when we had some snow, there were a couple of guys in the neighborhood that came over and to help me get the driveway clean and so forth. So they've been real helpful that way. But more of the friends that I have here in the Hedgesville area are related to the church, that I would like to be remembered as someone who loved, who enjoyed sharing cookies with her kids and her neighbors and the friends from church. That giving through the kitchen was part of what was her, but giving and just whether it was sharing and laughter, sometimes because of jokes that were pulled on different members of the family, or things that people said, oh boy, you've got to hear this one, guess what happened today? And in some cases, stuff that is remembered. In other cases, I don't remember why we laughed, but boy, were we laughing. I mean, I just remember sharing the joy of being together, and find that joy in the family that you have around you, the friends that are there, because you don't know how long they're going to be there, how often you'll see them, but enjoy the time you have with them.